All right, welcome to the online network of independent learning professionals. Today we're going to be speaking with Robert Turnage about robotic process automation for organizational change management. Woo, that's a mouthful.
Yeah.
Robert is a senior consultant specializing in automation implementations and large-scale software implementation projects. And with a background in e-learning and professional development, he has a unique insight into the change that automation is bringing to the workforce. I have known Robert for several years now. He's been part of this group for several years, and he is one of the smartest people I know, so I'm extremely excited to learn and gain some wisdom and insight from him on this topic. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen, and that way, Robert, you can share yours. And maybe just tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and we can tell us what you know.
Sure. So there is actually a formal slide in the presentation where I talk about this, but I am a project manager for a company. You'll see that this presentation is branded with Utegration. It is a SAP integrator for utilities, and if that makes your mind explode, that I can make it much more palatable. But essentially what I do is I work on implementations of SAP upgrades or any interaction with SAP. Right now I'm working with Hawaiian Electric. They're putting in smart meters, smart electrical meters, smart water meters into their electrical grid, and we're setting up the reporting and billing for that. And that's just a typical type of project that I work on.
Awesome.
But yeah, background in e-learning, I started working for an automation company and then moved into working in automation. I've been working in automation for 7 years now, so.
Quite a while. I know nothing about this topic, so anything you tell us today, it will be like brand new for me.
Great. Okay. Well, all right. So whenever, should I go ahead and get started? All right. Okay.
Yeah,
so, all right. First of all,
thank
you. First of all, I want to thank Patty and this group for having me. I've been doing a version of this presentation for IT departments for several years. And if you've worked in IT departments, you know this, they have their own language. This presentation is a way for me to get this information to a group of normal people. And I don't mean to downplay your abilities. You're not just normal people. You're exceptional people. You're just not what I would consider IT people. And that's fine. I do have some information specifically for educators and people who are in charge of organizational change that is unique to this presentation, but I put that at the end, so you have to sit through all of the slides to get to it. Okay, I will warn you that I like to pretend I'm the smartest person in the room. This means that I talk fast, I spew a lot of facts, and I use a lot of acronyms, and it can get overwhelming. So this is my challenge, is if I start going too crazy and I start saying things like, we will establish an API to your POS using SSL, just raise your hand, ask me to repeat myself, slow down, or explain a concept. There is some wiggle room. There's a lot of content in this presentation, but there's some wiggle room for us to take questions and repeat concepts or go into depth if we need to.
Awesome. We will definitely do that. If you see me fall off my chair, you'll know you're going too fast.
Absolutely. I always like to begin my presentations with the big questions. You know, why are we here? What are we doing? This presentation is about RPA, Robotic Process Automation. I'm sure you might have heard something about automation if you've seen any business news or any tech entrepreneur talking about how automation is going to get rid of all of our jobs. Automation is making work obsolete. This presentation is designed to give you a perspective of the current automation landscape and what it's like working on automation implementations. If anything, it'll give you something to argue with your relatives about next time you're all together, talking about the future of economy and the future of work. So a quick survey or quick summary of the discussion points of this presentation. We'll begin with a survey of the RPA landscape. I will define some terms and concepts and give a general overview. Some of this information is tailored more to IT departments, so bear with me a little bit at the beginning. And some of this, and then the next section we'll talk about an RPA implementation. This is what my job would be like if I'm implementing an RPA tool at a client site. And I'll end by talking about impacts to organizational change, educational opportunities. There's not going to be any hands-on demonstration or here it's an RPA tool and showing you what the screens look like and what the interfaces look like. But if you're interested in something like that, just reach out to me and we can arrange a meeting, see what we can do about that. Okay, a little bit about me. I've been working automation for the past 7 years. And before that, I was an instructional designer and an e-learning specialist. I do have an MA in e-learning, just like Patty. And it was a completely online program. I was traveling 100% at the time and couldn't attend a class during the week. So I did it completely online. I called it Harvard on the hard drive. After I graduated from the program, they brought me back to teach. So I taught the e-learning program for a while as well. I originally started working at an automation company as part of their, they called it workforce readiness, educational consultant, training consultant, and then took on more responsibilities. I'm currently working for a company named Utegration. You'll see the branding all over the presentation. We specialize in SAP consulting for the utilities industry. So if you have any questions about your electric or water bill, we can talk afterwards. I do have solar panels on my house. I can talk about that too. Okay, any questions before we dive in? Silence
I don't have any questions yet. Yeah, yep. Speak now or forever hold your peace. At least
no, there'll be a couple of other times
I'm just kidding.
For questions. So silence is approval in my world. So I'm going to move forward. Okay, what is RPA and why should I care? Okay, RPA is robotic process automation. It focuses on implementing automation for business processes. You might have heard politicians, CEOs talk about automation is going to make all of our jobs go away. And the answer is yes and no. Like a lot of information in public discourse, there are exaggerated claims. There's some straw man arguments. You should care because this technology is out there and it is changing the workforce and it is gaining traction. RPA has been available for decades, but you're seeing a renewed interest in it. Large companies like Microsoft, like SAP, have introduced their own RPA tools, their RPA products. And there are companies like UiPath that are getting millions of dollars. They're setting records in terms of fundraising. So there's a lot of business interest in RPA. It's a big deal. It's going to be a big deal over the next few years. So it's just best to be aware of it and understand strengths and weaknesses. So we've been talking about RPA. What does RPA do? It just moves data. That's it. That's all it does. On the simplest, most basic level, that's what RPA is, way of moving data. Now, why is this such a big deal? A lot of things move data, and APIs move data, for example, and APIs do it much better than RPA. I'm going to go on a rabbit trail about APIs because usually at this point in the presentation, someone from the IT department asks me about APIs and RPA and what the difference is. So I have one slide on that. We're going to just talk about it for a second and then rabbit trail on that and then get back to the main presentation. So APIs are application programming interfaces. They're behind the scenes interactions between software applications. To use them, you need to have someone build an API. Usually a programmer or someone with a high degree of technical knowledge. RPA, on the other hand, doesn't need an API. It is the user interface. It is the front end screen. So a person, and a lot of RPA tools are designed for non-technical users. So a person can turn on a screen recorder, record their actions, and press save, and then they have an RPA script. Think of it this way. I don't know if anyone uses Hootsuite or not, or any of like TweetDeck or any of the other social media aggregator platforms. Hootsuite is a tool, an application that you type in all of your social media posts and you type when you want them to be posted, and then you walk away from it, and it will automatically update your LinkedIn, your Twitter, your Facebook with social media posts at a specific time. Now, Hootsuite is an application that uses APIs. It just connects with the Twitter website, Facebook website behind the scenes, and executes those actions. You could do the same thing with RPA, but the RPA tool would not use the back end connection. It would use the front end. It would launch your web page, go to twitter.com, type in your tweet, press save. So it would act like a user. That's the main difference between the two. One's just back end, behind the scenes, very technical. One is user interface, not so technical. Um, let's see. So it's really about what you want to do with the tools. And I will say this, some tools don't have APIs attached to them. We're going to talk about PDF files in a little bit. There's not really an API for pulling information out of a PDF. And the main thing that I just want to say is there are different approaches to the same problem. And depending on what you're trying to accomplish, you can go either route. Okay, so the best way I can think of to talk about RPA when, as opposed to APIs, is if you look at a lot of the RPA marketing and advertising, they personify it. So what they do is, instead of describing it as a big tool with a bunch of 3-letter acronyms, they just describe it as the digital workforce. These are bots. We have brought bots onto our company, and our bots are going to be doing work for us. So think of your bots as college interns. Think of them as entry-level workers. They can handle simple, menial digital jobs and make things flow easier at your company. That's it. So why would you want to use a digital workforce instead of a human workforce? Well, my favorite visual for this is, have you ever had an assignment on a project where you've been told to check the box? Now, when you're checking the box, technically, these have both achieved the goal. They have, but there's a real obvious difference in quality here in terms of what has checked the box. In certain industries and in regulated industries, that's where I work primarily, like finance, utilities, military contracting. You can't just check the box. You have to check the box a certain way to be compliant with the regulatory standards. So if you've programmed the perfect check into your bot, it will always be consistent. It will always be standard. It will always meet the level. And it also creates an audit trail afterwards. So that's one reason why people choose digital workforce instead of a human workforce. Some advantages are that that's part of the appeal. It's consistency. You're confident in the quality, and I will say this: they never rest. They're always available 24/7. So I used to work at a company where every Friday afternoon, there was one person on the team who would go through their goals for the week and then kind of freak out at how behind they were, and then just make a bunch of assignments. So starting Friday between 3 and 4:30, there was always a fight because everyone would get a bunch of emails. You get an email saying, I need you to do this today before you go. And then someone else emails back and says, look, it's Friday at 4 o'clock. I'm leaving in an hour. The weekend's here. I have plans. And this is going to take me 2 or 3 hours. I can't do this. And there's a lot of arguments and fights. And I will just say, just in general, this happened every Friday, and it was a real morale killer for that particular team. Now, if I were a bot, I wouldn't care. If someone said, I need this done now, drop everything, the bot would work late into Friday night, over the weekend. With the digital workforce, no one cares. You send the work, the bot processes it. A lot of work happens, what we call during lights out time, with the digital workforce executing and performing transactions from the close of business until the next morning. Okay, so let's talk about some uses for RPA. When would you use this? How would you use a digital workforce to move data? Let's say, okay, that this is an example of going from unstructured to structured. Let's say your boss wants you to chart the price of anchovies for the next 3 months. No one knows why they want this, but that's a lot of work. You don't know why you've been asked to do this. So what you can do is you can build a bot that goes to eBay, Amazon, do Google searches for different areas of the marketplace, and just search the term anchovies. Whatever comes up, it will identify the pricing on the web pages and just collect all of that data and put it into a spreadsheet. And then after 120 days of doing this, you have it set that every morning at 8 a.m. we go to all of these websites and we collect all of this pricing data and we put it into a spreadsheet. And after 120 days, we have our bot go through and take that spreadsheet and make it a chart. That's a perfect example of something that RPA could do, the bots could do. You set it on a schedule, you set the trigger, 8 a.m. this happens, you have your script saying here's what the bot is going to do, and then at a certain point you have another script saying after you have 120 days worth of data, you go into your Excel file and create this chart. And you could even have it automatically email as soon as the chart is completed. Okay. If your boss loves what you've done and says, that's great, I now do the same thing with mackerel. What you do is you go into your script to your bot, and where you had it go into all of these websites and search for anchovies, all you have to do is change anchovies to mackerel, press go, and it will execute again. So once you have your script established, it's very quick to modify and reuse that over and over again. Okay. And another common process, and this is something that I'm actually working on right now, is finance and processing of invoices, processing of goods and receipts. If you're in a financial department, you're getting a lot of PDF invoices. You could have a folder full of receipts, but you need to get them into your database. And PDFs don't have APIs. There's no way to just automatically take all of the prices out of your PDFs. So what you can do is build an RPA tool to say, start at the first PDF file in this folder, open it up, find the vendor number, find the account number, find the vendor name, and find the date of the invoice, and take that information and put it into a database. Mark this PDF as processed and go to the next one in the folder. And all you have to do is make sure all of the PDFs are in a folder and have the script execute. I don't know if you've seen the commercials of the finance apps where it's just someone taking a photo of their receipt, and then they wad up their receipt and throw it away and say, there, I've done my financials. They're actually using RPA. What's happening is you're taking a photo of something and it's going to one of the RPA bots who are examining that receipt, pulling out the pertinent data, and then putting it in a structured data format. Okay, so we have a pretty good idea of what RPA can do. It's a simple menial task that normally would bore employees. I will say this, that if I was told, here's a stack of 2,500 receipts, go through them and enter them into this database, I would find a new job. I would do something different. If you're someone who really loves sorting receipts more than anything, I apologize. The job sounds boring, and it's the type of job I would rather program a bot to do for me so I can focus on something else. So how does the conversation go from we're using automation to perform menial tasks and give our company a competitive advantage to automation will destroy all jobs? That's kind of how the conversation has gone. Part of this has to do with the combination of RPA and AI. Artificial intelligence and data analysis. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Right now, RPA is used with data analysis and artificial intelligence to perform a little smarter in the workplace. You might hear me say this several times through this presentation, or if you have any conversations with me, but RPA does not make decisions. It is the hands of your operation. It is going to just do what it's told and nothing else. They don't really think. And that's been a challenge because there's several times where you have to make decisions. Okay, and this is where artificial intelligence, this is where data analysis, and this is where algorithms come in. And a really good example of this is Google search. So if you do a Google search, the RPA portion is I populate the screen with data. I type in a Google search and a bunch of websites that come up. The actual getting the information from the websites and posting them on the page is RPA. The decision point, which one gets posted at the top of your search results, which one gets posted at the bottom, that would be your cerebral cortex decision making, your AI algorithm. And the information that goes into that AI algorithm is coming from your data analysis. So let's think of it this way: lawyers. Okay, imagine before the internet, before digital transformation, where we just had a giant library of law cases and law books. If we needed to reference a law or a judge's decision, you would have a team of expert researchers lock themselves up with a stack of books for hours every day and identify and pull the information. Well, Google search has eliminated that amount of time and that amount of work. You can do more. You can do more faster, um, and the job doesn't necessarily go away. The job has just been transformed radically because of the automation and because of the artificial intelligence. Okay. Uh, so at that point, what you can do is understand the algorithm, understand the artificial intelligence, and think and become a better searcher. So let's say we're now a law researcher. We used to go to a stack of books and research case law or judges' decisions. Now we know what keywords to look for. We type in certain keywords to kind of hack the algorithm and get better results faster. And that's a new learning opportunity that comes after an automation implementation. Okay. So another way we can see the interaction between artificial intelligence and RPA is the chatbot. So if you've been on a lot of websites, you might have seen this, where you're on the website more than a couple of minutes and a little chat window appears, "May I help you?" That is going to be an RPA bot. That's going to be something someone has programmed, and it is a digital worker. So you can start typing in things, and the artificial intelligence will perceive what you're typing in and come up with a response to it. The artificial intelligence compensates for typos, compensates for abbreviations, and it can handle basic requests. Uh, and a lot of times it can satisfactorily process your request. Now, if it gets stuck or runs into an issue, built into the script for the bot is I would love to help you with this, but I can't. Let me transfer you to a coworker. And then it sends the chat to a real person. So that's where a lot of the RPA works, is that it handles very simple things, but it reaches an escalation point where it would call in a person to intervene. And this is how the digital workforce supplements the human workforce. So think of it in terms of workload. Companies are able to process a greater volume of customer interactions by augmenting the real workforce with the digital workforce. And the digital workforces aren't able to do everything. Only the most routine and basic tasks. But these are the most frequent tasks. So the people get to work on, the humans get to work on the more complicated issues, the more challenging issues. And that's their real advantage. Okay, so these are some common RPA tools. There are a lot of automation companies and products out there. They all have strengths and weaknesses. Some of them require coding. You need to be able to be a programmer to use them. Some of them are focused primarily on web pages and web automation, while other ones are specific to like Oracle or SAP, an enterprise application. All of them are labeled up here except for the one in the top middle. That one is Microsoft's Power Automate. It used to be called Microsoft Flow. They've rebranded it. But that's the one in the top middle, the little blue icon. In this presentation, I'm really not going to go into details about these tools. If you want to talk about them, I'm certainly available for that. But think of them like an e-learning authoring tool. Captivate versus Articulate. All of them have strengths and weaknesses, and you need to know what's best for your company before you invest in a tool. Okay. Because RPA tools are geared towards larger organizations, it's important to know your organization and what tool would work best. Are you going to be building the scripts yourself? Or are you going to hire a consultant like me to build the scripts for you? Are you going to be automating web pages, or are you going to be automating other applications? If you were the CIO of a company, we would probably spend a lot more time on this slide, but I just want to power through to the good stuff. Okay. There are three main components of an RPA implementation. There's the bots themselves. There are scripts, and there's what's known as a controller server. Okay, the bots are the ones that do the work. Some of them have, some RPA tools let you name your bot so you can feel like you're working with a partner. My bot that I use on my own is named Jimmy. That's the name of my boss. So I feel like I'm delegating work to my boss whenever I get my bot to do something. Uh, bots do need a desktop environment to work on. It can be a computer where you have the bot on the computer, or you can set up a virtual computer for them to use. And then there are two different types of bots. One is an unattended bot. So think of this as one off by itself. We send it emails. It does research on its own. It has access to your applications. Or there's an attended bot as well, which is a computer that works, partners with a person, sits on their computer and helps them perform tasks. So think of it this way: if you're typing away or you're working on something, and you've named your bot Siri. Let's just say this: Siri, I need a TPS report. Suddenly, your bot goes. That's your trigger for your bot to go and create a TPS report and send it to you. Okay. Scripts. These are the instructions for the bots. They include a trigger, which is when do we begin executing the script. The objects, what we're going to be interacting with, the actions, our expected results, any decision points, and then exception handling. Exception handling basically means what happens when something goes wrong, what do we do? And this is where I was talking about we escalate to a human. A lot of times the exception handling is document everything, send an email to the human support for this, and consider this script completed. Triggers can be anything from time of day. They can, like every day at 8 o'clock in the morning, do this activity. Or it can be every time someone sends you an email to the bot. For example, with receipts. I just sent this receipt in an email to the bot. That's my trigger for the bot to behave. Or you can even have it, I mentioned earlier, you say, Siri, create a TPS report. A trigger can be a vocal command. It can be a lot of really interesting things. It can be in anything really. Okay, the controller server is the, think of it as the mothership for all of the bots. It keeps track of all of the bots in the company as well as their workload. So for example, if one bot is overwhelmed performing certain actions, it might reroute their activities to another bot. So if you have an idle bot and an active bot, and the active bot gets behind its schedule, it would reassign the work to the other bot. It also collects all of the data from all of the bots. So if you need an audit trail, what activity was performed at what time on what day, or how long it took something to be performed, it collects all of that information as well. You can use this for you can do custom reports, and there's some standard dashboarding that come with most controller servers. Okay, I am not sure if anyone has ever used the term technological debt or not. It's something that IT departments and CIOs talk about a lot. It is when you're buying large software packages, it's often not just a one-time deal. You buy licenses to maintain it. You have a server or annual fees associated with them. With RPA solutions, usually the upfront cost is somewhere in the 6 figures and mid 5 figures every year afterwards. So if we were in an IT group, I would talk a lot more about this, but we're going to just move forward. But this is information to know if you ever need a business case for an RPA tool. So the RPA, how do we justify the price? So when companies are buying the tool, they don't present it as, oh, we're spending a lot of money to buy a toy. They're presenting it as investment into the organization. So when making the business case, we think of it this way, checking the box, how I talked earlier, in terms of, let's say you're in a regulatory environment and maybe we've had a lot of mistakes or a lot of parts where we haven't checked the box as well as we could have, and we've received a bunch of fines. You can say, we're no longer going to have these fines, and to prove it, we're implementing this RPA tool. I will say this, that I have been in meetings where people put this as, present this as headcount, reduction of headcount, where people have said, hey, you can buy this and you can get 6 figures of employees off the payroll. In my experience, that doesn't happen quite as well as the salespeople like presenting, and it's not necessarily a one-to-one. It's a little bit more complicated than that. And the reason is that the jobs don't really go away. The work changes, and in some cases it changes significantly. The amount of hours spent on specific tasks are going to change, but new tasks actually crop up as well. As educators, this should be a giant red flag for you. Anytime there's a change in an organization or new job tasks, you have work to do. You're going to be retraining people. So what I like thinking about when I think about the nature of work and how things are changing is mechanics, car mechanics in particular. My dad was a car mechanic in the 60s when he was in high school, and he is a great person to talk to about how that job has changed over the past 50 years or so. He knows cars. He knows cars really well. But when he looks at my Toyota's engine, he gets really frustrated because the engine is designed so that you can't even change the oil unless you have special tools for it. When I take my Toyota in to get it serviced, the attendant, the mechanic comes out with not a laptop, a little tablet, and does diagnostics, electronic diagnostics on it. The job has not gone away. The job has changed significantly with technology and new tools being introduced. The actual day-to-day functions are significantly different, but the actual job hasn't changed. There's a book, Daniel Susskind has written a book called A World Without Work, which is a history of automation from basically the Industrial Revolution to today. And he jokes that there's only one job that's ever been completely eliminated thanks to automation, and that is the job of elevator operator. And I'm not sure how many people want to be an elevator operator or aspire to have that as a career, but that's a job that got eliminated. The work will change, not go away. Okay, we are about halfway through. Do we have any questions before I go on?
We'll give people just a moment here. If you've got a question, you can post it in the chat, or if you just want to speak right out, feel free.
I think I'm on. So
yeah, hey Joseph.
Hi. Yeah, this is something that while I'm not directly involved in, my company is smack dab in the middle of doing this. And the example you gave of the automating, as far as purchase orders and invoices, and all that kind of stuff is something that they're looking at right now. So that's the point where we're at. I'm like, oh, I recognize the name of some of these companies. My quick question at this point is, that they have kind of gotten to the point where they understand costs of implementation, right? How do people derive the cost of, post-implementation?
Sure. Yeah, so in terms of cost of post-implementation, what happens is, there is like UiPath, I'll talk about that particularly. The UiPath has built into the software, when you set up your scripts, it just kind of asks you, how long does it take a real person to do this activity, and how much do they get paid an hour? And you just say, oh, it takes someone 10 minutes to do this and they get paid $20 an hour. You just put in numbers like that. And from the moment that you establish the software, it keeps a running total of how much money it has saved the company based on those figures. So 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, that's part of their standard dashboard reporting, is ever since you put in this tool, you have now saved $50,000. You have now saved $75,000. That's something that they have built in their tool just to help people realize cost saved. It's just capturing that information and then changing it into a monetary amount.
Okay, all right. So it's basically you're just looking at like cost avoidance.
Correct. You're right. Cost avoidance, and I work in regulated industries. Fines are a big thing. And if you can show reduction of fines, that usually justifies the cost as well. So.
Okay, thanks. I will probably have a bunch more questions later, but
absolutely.
For right now, that was thanks. Appreciate it.
No problem. Okay.
Thanks, Joseph.
All right, this section is what an RPA implementation looks like. I will let you know that I have never been on an implementation that looks perfectly like this. There's always a degree of flexibility to the approach, and it's always custom to whoever's buying it. The organization and the tool are going to be interacting with each other in a unique way. But it's always great to start out with if everything was perfect, there's how, in a perfect world, here's how we would do it, and go forward with that plan. So I'm going to walk through the perfect world plan with you. This is an overview of the end-to-end project. It starts before the tool's even installed and continues through implementation all the way to establishing a dedicated center of excellence, RPA Center of Excellence. We're going to go through each of these phases. Okay. Before you even buy the tools, you need to know why you need them and what you're going to use them for. That makes it just a lot cheaper in the long run and a lot more effective and efficient. There needs to be at least a effort. There needs to be an effort towards process discovery and process analysis. Okay, as educators and instructional designers, we're probably familiar with process documentation. The idea is to get all of the process information into a standard repository so that it can be analyzed. You can get the information from the workers. Through interviews, or you can have them do screen recordings. I will let you know that there are several process discovery tools out there. For example, if you're using an enterprise application like SAP is the world I come from, but there's tools that you can get that plug into SAP and essentially monitor everyone's use of SAP over a month or 2 months, and then it spits out a bunch of process flows saying, here is how people actually use the system, and here are the most frequent transactions, and here's the type of work that people are using in the system. Part of process documentation is most of the time companies work in silos where there's just one group that does one thing. When you get all of your process documentation together, you can see end to end how data moves through the company. And this is a way of looking for company-wide efficiencies as opposed to just efficiencies within a particular silo. With the big picture, you can see where handoffs happen, how data gets changed, and maybe opportunities for automation. Having said this, being on implementations, you really need to have, if you're going to do a company-wide RPA implementation, you need to have sponsorship at the executive level. You need to have someone in a position of political authority pushing for this, because there will be cultural resistance to it. The ultimate goal is to save the organization money or increase productivity. It's important to keep this in mind because that's going to be the message that you use whenever you talk with someone or interact with someone that is going to be resistant to the change. You say, like in my case, we're doing this to help reduce the number of compliance fines that we've received. We're doing this to save the company money. We're doing this because we have a better job for you. And if you stop doing the menial work, you can start moving on to other more important work. Okay. Once your processes are documented and structured in a standard way, you need to perform an analysis on them and find good candidates for automation. You'll want to look at something that gives you the maximum value in the shortest period of time. That helps when you start implementing the RPA tool to get some quick wins so that, if you can imagine someone was spending 10 hours a week doing work they didn't want to do, and now that went away, they're so happy they become evangelical for the tool. Like, you've got to use this bot. This bot's amazing. So after you've prepared for the automation tool, this is where you purchase the software and you set it up and you configure it and you get your controller server going and you get your bots going. This is a big investment. You want to make sure you do it right. So understand your organization. Ask yourself, what is the appropriate tool? Go through a list of criteria. There's one of the RPA tools on the market is designed specifically for call centers. I didn't use it on my slide, but there's one that it is the best for call centers. And if you are only doing RPA in call centers, I would recommend going with that tool. But if you're going to be using it for anything other than call centers, it's really not a great tool. Yeah, those are things to consider. And you have to think about what the future of your company is going to look like, what it's going to look 3 years down the road, 5 years down the road. As a consultant, I come in, I set up the product, I hand it off to the business, and I leave. You have to think about what you want the consultants to do, and what you want your organization to own after the consultants leave. Okay. Yes, you can go through a checklist of features and use it to help you decide which RPA to use. You can also call a consultant, and my fees are reasonable. So after that, we're moving down, and now from after the tool's been selected, it's implemented. We're getting to the point where your industrial design senses should be starting to tingle. The new software company, it's new software in the company, and we're starting to use it. Now it's getting the workforce prepared to use the software tool. This is knowledge. This is education. Things are changing. When you start using RPA tools and when you start getting your bots, mistakes are going to happen. Some of them are going to happen on purpose. For example, the bot gets a job that's too complicated for the bot. It's going to say a mistake has happened. I need to get a person to come in and do this. But it could also happen because of other factors. Let's say your bot goes to eBay, gathers pricing information from eBay. And then eBay changes its interface, and now the bot can't recognize the pricing information on that. You need to have someone go back and be able to modify the script so it can find the pricing information again. Third-party application, third-party website redesign is a reason to update and modify your bot. One of the issues I ran into was someone changed the save button to the OK button, and the script said click the save button, and the bot froze up because it's like there's no save button on the screen. I don't know what to do. A person, that's easy. I click OK. I understand that. The bot didn't understand that, and so that was an example of just a type of update that we would have to do with the script. As soon as we said change it from click the save button to click the OK button, everything worked fine. But those things happen all the time. This is where continuous improvement comes in, and there needs to be a group of people who are dedicated to this. They're responsible for updating, managing, retraining the bots. And this depends on the organization. It could be a dedicated team, or it could be a series of experts scattered throughout your organization. As the RPA matures in adoption throughout the organization, more people want to use the tool. Sometimes when I've seen this when directors are talking, one of them talks about how much money they've been able to save with this tool, and then the other director says, "How can I get in on this? How can I use this tool as well?" Once the organization owns it, more and more people can use that. Because the bots don't rest. You can keep giving them assignments. And what happens is, and I've seen this in some companies where they'll create a repository or a library and then they call them citizen developers. But what they'll do is they'll conduct company-wide training. Here's how you build scripts for your bot. And then everyone just starts building scripts on their own. And let's say, I have a script for my bot that every Friday at 5 o'clock, it goes out and fills in my time card for me. So I never have to fill in my time card again. And then what I could do is put that in the community repository, put it in the library, and other people can say, I never want to do my time card again either. And they take that script and modify it for their own time card, give it to the bots, and then the bots will do everyone's time cards for them. That's a type of thing that can happen where information goes viral within a company. Okay. So now you have viral information or viral automation happening throughout your company. Sometimes it's organic. People just take it on their own and start building scripts for their bots. Sometimes it's structured, where department heads say, okay, we are now going to be building scripts for our bots for our team. There'll be just a lot of different initiatives. So viral adoption is an opportunity for retraining and education. As I said, people get interested when you teach them the tool, teach them the application. And that's where more skills and more training happen. And then that leads to the final phase, which is the excellence or mature RPA implementation. So what happens here is you would establish, some companies have established centers of excellence, RPA centers of excellence. This could be a dedicated team. This could also be just like a committee that meets on a regular basis. But this is a group that would look through your community community scripts and look for certain standards of quality. Make sure that there's no infinite loops in the scripts. The start states and end states are appropriate. It leverages data in a consistent way, or there's validation steps built into the scripts. You establish those, and then you identify, oh, this is the best script that we saw one of our citizens developers build. Make some tweaks to it, and then we'll promote it company-wide, or we'll make it a standard throughout all departments. You have a control center or a quality center that makes sure that certain scripts or certain behavior gets rewarded and promoted, and retraining happens. If someone writes a bad script for a bot and gives that to the community, you can say, hey, it's not going to get widespread adoption unless it meets certain criteria. But you have a center of excellence. You have people who are in charge of managing the community content. Okay. So when looking through this presentation, you might have already been thinking about opportunities for education, developing education material. This last section is talking about strategies to help drive the organizational change. Education is change for good. It involves anticipating a need and providing a support to drive and help people towards performing new behavior. Automation involves a lot of change and provides many opportunities for education and retraining. So one of the first things I do is I look for what I call Mastery Plus candidates. These are subject matter experts. These are people who know their own process really well, and they also have a drive and a desire to learn more. These are the ones that I would call out and approach and say, hey, would you like to learn a little bit more about automation and learn about the automation tools? And they can help not only generate the documentation, but they can build their own scripts and provide insight into decision-making criteria. They also become evangelists for the rest of the company. You know, a lot of times when we begin our training presentations, we say, what's in it for me? That's how we begin. When you're doing a large cultural change within your organization, it helps for people who've already answered that question for themselves. I can see what's in it for me. I can see the advantage, and I can talk to other people about it. Okay. Another thing, something we need to foster is good judgment and insight. The bots are just the hands of the solution. They don't really make decisions very well. And here's the real fatal flaw with artificial intelligence is that it works on the assumption that the past is always perfect. There are certain examples, some famous examples, like there was an HR company that used artificial intelligence to help on its job screening, and as soon as they turned it on, it's only hired people who graduated from Cornell and rejected all other candidates. You know, so what it does is AI looks at the history, looks at the data, looks for patterns, and then emphasizes those patterns. You know, as people, we've got intuition. As people, we can grow and change, and we can develop expertise and good judgment. And that's something that will always have a competitive advantage over AI and over automation. So focus on developing that. A key point is to get familiar with automation tools, what they can do, what they can't do. Some of the tools do require some technical expertise, but a lot of them, if you know flow charting, you know how to work the automation tool. On the additional resources slide at the end of this presentation, which I will be making available to everyone, there is UiPath Academy is one where they have decided to make all of their training content free, which is astounding. You can go there and get very familiar with the tool in a very short period of time. All right, I always like to end on a little hopeful note, uplifting, and I'll just say, robots can't dream. You know, artificial intelligence can't dream. People can dream. This career that I have didn't exist when I was younger. When I was in college, it didn't really exist. Search engine optimization is a career that I had no idea that would ever be a thing when I was a kid. On the other day on the internet, I saw that there was a company that sells insurance for your fantasy football league. That's astounding to me. That's people adapting and growing. The job market is changing, and as jobs decrease, more opportunities present themselves. So just be aware of those and dream and look forward, hope for the future. All right, these are just some additional resources that we have. I mentioned A World Without Work by Daniel Susskind. Weapons of Math Destruction by Kathy O'Neill is a great book if you want to learn about flaws within algorithms. There's RPA handbooks, and then I mentioned the UiPath Academy. There are literally hundreds of hours of free automation training available, which is astounding. If you want to pay, Udemy has many courses on the specific tools. And then there's the Formulated Automation podcast, which they just tell news of the industry and trends. So that's it. Do we have any questions? I know we have.
We've got one question from Margaret. And she's asking if you're having success with the project team engaging OCM and training early in the process and partnering. Sometimes she finds they're engaged too late in the process.
Okay.
Like an add-on.
Right. Okay. And I know exactly what she's talking about. This is something that with my background, at least on the projects I manage, we make sure that OCM is involved as soon as possible, because I will say this, my background is in OCM and I understand the importance of the team getting involved early. So that's something where I see them as part of the planning stage, where, especially when we're talking about process documentation and process analysis, the argument that I always give is the training group knows your company better than anyone else because they have to train everyone. When you're dealing with a large company, everything's in silos. You might have maybe a chief operating officer, but that's at the top down. The bottom up is your training group, and they know how everyone actually does the work, and we want to get them involved as soon as possible. So when I manage projects, I get OCM involved earlier. I can't speak to other teams, other consulting companies, but it's an issue, and I believe that they should be involved early, which is one reason why I do presentations like this.
Yeah. Thanks, Robert. What other questions do folks have? Any other questions?
It's a lot. I just dumped a bunch of information on you, and it's very technical. I do want to say that I'm always available. You can reach out to me through Slack or any follow-up. I didn't put my contact information in this presentation, but I could be reached. So if this is something where we need to mull on it, think about it, and then come back, I'm definitely available for that.
So
yeah, and like Robert said, you can find him on Slack. Sorry, go ahead, Joseph.
No problem. So yeah, I just Margaret's question was a very good one. I'm here basically because I know. So one thing, I work for a specific university, so I'm unlike a lot of the folks on this call where I'm not necessarily a consultant going in and out.
Yeah.
But that gives me the advantage of seeing how a large company is thinking about doing this, and so as seems often to be the case with training, we figure out a way to get ourselves at the table. Right?
Yes. Yes.
And, we don't need you here yet because we're not ready to train it. And we're like, yeah, you know what? Let me just sit there for my own edification,
right,
and whatnot. And the other thing is, so I really appreciate the training background that you presented, because a lot of the work that we do, automation or not, is helping other people define what their actual business process is. Because the first time you ask them, it's always like, oh, well, you got A and you need B and C. How long could that training take? 10 minutes? Right? And then you start asking the questions and you get into it. So in the 1 or 2 meetings that I've been able to attend for this, I kept on asking these kind of questions, like, from a sales perspective, the company presenting this stuff to us, they're with the ABC group. Like, it's so simple. Cut the purchase order. and,
Right, right.
and all your problems will be solved. And I was like, that sounds great. You know, how do you handle this particular, you know, kind of situation? Like, oh, so, but to boil that all back down to training, yeah, there are tons, you know, if you can get to the table somehow,
Yeah.
there are tons of training opportunities, anything from, hey, you need to learn a little bit about what this whole thing, you know, robotic process automation is.
Yeah.
Right? To here's the software that somebody selected and a little bit about how to use it, to, hey, you're going to actually be doing scripts. So let's teach you a little bit about how to do that.
Right.
And then down to the, well, hey, I'm the guy who used to do this job. You know, what do I do now? Am I out of work? Oh, no, you've got a whole new thing that you've got to do, and let me train you how to do it. So there are, you know, from a training perspective, there are a lot of, you know, I would say, you know, positive opportunities.
Yes.
But it is hard at the beginning for people to.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree 100%. A lot of times I talk about when if you're working with a chief operating officer who's supposed to know how the whole company works, I always ask about how does training tie into this, because as I said, COOs have a top-down view, training has a bottom-up view. They see how it really functions, you know, and they understand that because they have to have all of that information. When implementing automation, I always say the training people would have your process documentation. They would know how the company works, and the trainers probably know what's inefficient, what areas that we have to improve, and they can also have a pretty good idea of what people can do after this. You know, if I don't waste my time counting these beans, what could I be doing instead? Because they would understand the skills of the workforce and where to grow from this. You know, you need a bit of vision, and talking about dreams, you know, what we could do. If I didn't have all of this tedious work to do, what could I do next? And
Yeah.
sometimes, yeah.
I just want to say, Robert, I had really very, very small amount of understanding of like exactly what this was about at the beginning, and you did a really great job of boiling it down. I know it's a lot of technical content, but I really have a much, much stronger, clearer understanding of what the capabilities are, what this all means. So I could actually have a somewhat intelligent conversation if I was approached,
That was the goal.
you know, at least high level. Yeah.
That was the goal, to make your Thanksgiving dinner more palatable, right? Just...
well, we are at the top of the hour, so we will, to respect everyone's time, we'll conclude here. But like Robert said, if you have any questions, follow-up questions, you can post them on Slack. I'll make sure that they get over to Robert. We will be, we've been recording this, so I'll also put this up in case you want to go back through. And just really, really good job. I mean, I can't, wow, just, it's a really good illustration of taking very technical content. It's just good training experience, right? Which is what we do, taking very technical content sometimes and distilling it into, you know, knowing your audience. So very clear.
Right.
Yeah, I agree, Jane. And we've given you some chat love there, Margaret. Thanks so much for simplifying the topic. Very clear and informative. Thank you so much. We'll be meeting, just so everybody knows, we won't be meeting again this month. We meet on the first and third Thursdays. So the next time we'll meet will be August 6th. Otherwise, we'll be on Slack and we can chat there. Thanks so much, everyone. We'll hop off. Thanks again, Robert. You're amazing, as always.
Oh, thanks.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye.